Ultimate Language Academy provides one-to-one coaching for PTE, NATE-CCL, and IELTS with authentic practice materials and a proven success rate. For more information, please visit our website given below. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page or WhatsApp us on the number given below.
Charles Darwin published his paper on the origin of species in 1859. It is one of the most well-known pieces of scientific literature in human history. In the paper, Darwin proposes the theory of natural selection. He states that for any generation of any species, there will always be a struggle for survival. Individuals who are better suited to the environment are fitter, and therefore have a much higher chance of surviving and reproducing. This means that later generations are likely to inherit these stronger genetic traits. Extroverts tend to move quickly and try to influence situations directly, while introverts give themselves time to develop their insights before exposing them to the world. Extroverts are happy making decisions in the thick of events, while introverts want to reflect before taking action. Neural networks are some of the most important tools in AI. So far, they run on traditional processors in the form of adaptive software, but experts are working on an alternative concept, the neuromorphic computer. In this case, neurons are not simulated by software but reconstructed in hardware components. A team of researchers has now demonstrated a new approach to such hardware-targeted magnetic waves that are generated and divided in micrometer-sized wafers. Today, however, Skinner's errors are forcing the skeptics to think again. See article. Backed by billionaire techies such as Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, schools around the world are using new software to personalize learning. This could help hundreds of millions of children stuck in dismal classes, but only if edtech boosters can resist the temptation to revive harmful ideas about how children learn. To succeed, edtech must be at the service of teaching, not the other way around. In medicine, the application of information technology means the digitalization of medical records and the establishment of an intelligent network for sharing those records. Other benefits flow from these technological changes. In the past, medicine has taken a paternalistic stance, with the all-knowing physician dispensing wisdom, but that is becoming increasingly untenable.
Born in London to music hall parents, Charlie Spencer Chaplin and his brother Sidney were placed in an orphanage at a very early age. Becoming a vaudeville performer, he joined Fred Carnot's company in 1906. He made his film debut in Making a Living, 1914, and introduced the famous seedy and soft-hearted gentleman tramp routine, which became his hallmark. Numerous films for various studios brought him world fame, all based on his mastery of pathos and slapstick acrobatics. Scientists make observations, have assumptions, and do experiments. After these have been done, they get their results. Then there is a lot of data from scientists. The scientists around the world have a picture of the world. Behavioral and social sciences research helps predict, prevent, and manage illness in individuals and in whole populations. This research also helps people change their behaviors, understand treatments, and learn how to stick with them. Society's role is significant too. Access to health care affects decision-making and behavior. A constellation is an area on the celestial sphere in which a group of stars forms an imaginary outline or pattern, typically representing an animal, mythological person or creature, or an inanimate object. The origins of the earliest constellations likely go back to prehistory. Much of today's business is conducted across international borders, and while the majority of the global business community might share the use of English as a common language, the nuances and expectations of business communication might differ greatly from culture to culture. The advantage of the great European and American orchestras is that they were able to establish their iconic status in an age when their identity could become entrenched. There was less competition and it was easier to create a brand. Not only did they have the best halls, they attracted the best musicians, who tended to stay put. The purpose of the informative speech is to provide interesting, useful, and unique information to your audience. By dedicating yourself to the goals of providing information and appealing to your audience, you can take a positive step towards succeeding in your efforts as an informative speaker. Despite a number of events in recent years devoted to language diversity, language endangerment, and multilingualism, such as the International Year of Languages, public awareness of the issues is still remarkably limited. Only 1 in 4 of the population know that half the languages of the world are so seriously endangered that they are unlikely to survive the present century. Nature offers no greater splendor than the starry sky on a clear, dark night. Silent, timeless, jeweled with the constellations of ancient myth and legend, the night sky has inspired wonder throughout the ages, a wonder that leads our imaginations far from the confines of Earth and the pace of the present day, out into boundless space and cosmic time itself. To understand the past, you have to be able, as far as possible, to think as the people in the period you are studying thought. The example of what it must have been like to be a peasant in the Middle Ages is used. However, sensibilities change over time and we can't completely throw off the mentality of the present. Therefore, every age will have a slightly different perspective on the same period of the past, no matter what the facts are. The life of a hunter-gatherer is indeed, as Thomas Hobbes said of the state of nature, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. In some respects, to be sure, wandering through the jungle bagging monkeys may be preferable to the hard slog of subsistence agriculture. While advances in agricultural science have always been critical to ensuring we help feed the world, its impact and importance is even greater now, as population grows at a rapid rate and the availability of arable land steadily declines. Science and technology solutions are essential to meeting growing demand for food, maintaining market competitiveness, and adapting to land mitigating risks. Don't miss the beginning of the lecture since it is very often most valuable part, for instance, because it reviews previous lectures or outlines objects and lecture structure. If you easily get distracted by other students, sit near the front. Teenage girls are continuing to outperform boys in English while the gender gap in achievements in math and science has almost disappeared. The figures show that last year 80% of 14-year-old girls reached at least the expected level 5 in English, compared with 65% of boys. But in math, the girls are just 1% ahead of boys, while in science the difference is 2%. Pluto lost its official status as a planet yesterday, when the International Astronomical Union downsized the solar system from 9 to 8 planets. Although there had been a passionate debate at the IAU General Assembly meeting in Prague about the definition of a planet, and whether Pluto met the specifications, the audience greeted the decision to exclude it with applause. To understand the past, you have to be able, as far as possible, to think as the people in the period you are studying thought. The example of what it must have been like to be a peasant in the Middle Ages is used. However, sensibilities change over time and we can't completely throw off the mentality of the present. Therefore, every age will have a slightly different perspective on the same period of the past, no matter what the facts are. To reduce pollution, it is essential that the town center becomes a car-free zone. A ring road should be built so that cars are diverted away from the town center. The main shopping streets could be converted into a pedestrianized area. If trees and flowers are planted, the town center will be transformed into a quiet and green space where residents can enjoy shopping and walking in a healthy environment.
The Grand Canyon is 277 miles long, up to 18 miles wide, and attains a depth of over a mile. While the specific geologic processes and timing that form the Grand Canyon are the subject of debate by geologists, recent evidence suggests the Colorado River established its course through the canyon at least 17 million years ago. Although it hails from a remote region of the western Himalayas, this plant now looks entirely at home on the banks of English rivers. Brought to the UK in 1839, it quickly escaped from Victorian gardens and colonized river banks and damp woodlands. Now it is spreading across Europe, New Zealand, Canada and the US. Yellow is considered as the most optimistic color. Yet surprisingly, people lose their tempers more often in yellow rooms and babies cry more in them. The reason may be that yellow is the hardest color for eyes to take in. So it can be overpowering if overused. As the Delta variant of coronavirus sweeps the U.S., businesses, universities, and cities such as New York and San Francisco have introduced vaccine mandates to boost uptake of jabs, but vaccine hesitancy remains high, and a cottage industry for bogus inoculation cards has emerged to help people get around the rules. It's time for this young loggerhead turtle to go to work. We can tether turtles in these little cloth harnesses, put them into this tank and dull swimming place. University of North Carolina biologist Ken Lohman studies sea turtles that are programmed from birth for an extraordinary journey. Mother turtles buried the eggs on the beach and then return to the sea, and the eggs hatch about 50 to 60 days later. We define paraphrasing as putting a passage from an author into your own words. However, what are your own words? How different must your paraphrase be from the original? The answer is it should be considerably different. The whole point of paraphrasing is to show you have read and understood another person's ideas and can summarize them in your own writing style rather than borrowing their phrases. If you just change a few words or add some bits of your own to an otherwise reproduced passage, you will probably be penalized for plagiarism. You should aim to condense and simplify a writer's ideas and describe them using different sentence structures and expressions. Written by 10 eminent professors, it had been updated to reflect the shifts of sociological thought in the last 5 years, making it the most comprehensive, authoritative, and contemporary dictionary available. It was essential reading for all students and teachers of sociologies and other related courses, and also for the general reader. Rice took a stab at settling the argument with a meta-analysis, a study of studies, on whether people can really perceive better than CD quality sound. He analyzed data from 18 studies, including more than 400 participants and nearly 13,000 listening tests. Overall, listeners picked out the better than CD quality track 52.3% of the time. Statistically significant, if not all that impressive. Certainly one of the important values of literature is that it nourishes our emotional lives. An effective literary work may seem to speak directly to us, especially if we are ripe for it. The inner life that good writers reveal in their characters often gives us glimpses of some portion of ourselves. We can be moved to laugh, cry, tremble, dream, ponder, shriek, or rage with a character by simply turning the page instead of turning our lives upside down. At the beginning of each fiscal year, funds are allocated to each state account in accordance with the university's financial plan. Funds are allocated to each account by objects of expenditure. Account managers are responsible for ensuring that adequate funds are available in the appropriate object before initiating transactions to use the funds. New research shows that during the global financial crisis, workers who stayed in jobs did not reduce their working hours, despite the claims that cuts in hours have led to job losses. A study found that the life of people who stayed with the same employer remained relatively unchanged. IT may well change the way you live, yet again. Welcome to the world mobile commerce, where your handheld device, be it a mobile phone, a personal digital assistant, PDA, or any other wireless application will soon be used for commercial transactions. Skeptical? Consider these facts. In Japan, mobile phones are used for location-based services where the mobile service providers tie up with a host of other players such as restaurants, car rental companies, etc. When the mobile user enters that zone, messages from all these players are flashed on the mobile device. Location-based services are proved in several other countries as well. Tourism is a challenging sector on which divides statistics, since businesses serving tourists also service local people. Therefore, it is not straightforward to estimate how much business sector's revenues and how many jobs are due to tourist expenditures. The benefits and disadvantages of globalization are the subject of ongoing debate. The downside to globalization can be seen in the increased risk for the transmission of diseases. Globalization has of course led to great good, too. Richer nations now can come to the aid of poorer nations in crisis. Increasing diversity in many countries has meant more opportunity to learn about and celebrate other cultures. Botanic gardens are scientific and cultural institutions established to collect, study, exchange and display plants for research and for the education and enjoyment of the public. There are major botanic gardens in each capital city. Zoological parks and aquariums are primarily engaged in the breeding, preservation and display of native and exotic fauna in captivity. Since our graduate admission school is not centralized, each of the university's 6 schools and colleges admits students to its own programs. For information about specific program degrees, graduate applications, graduate admission requirements and procedures, graduate scholarships and the status of your application, visit the individual school websites. The wonderful framework of mature trees creates a secluded implants atmosphere that unites a great variety of plantings to inspire visitors in all seasons. Spring in the garden is marked by leafing up and flowering of trees and the eruption of the flowers in the bulb meadows and woodland understory. Certain types of methodology are more suitable for some research projects than others. For example, the use of questionnaires and surveys is more suitable for quantitative research, whereas interviews and focus groups are more often used for qualitative research purposes. Every culture is riddled with unwritten rules, such as ones on punctuality. They are the invisible scaffold that frames the behavior of individuals so that the collective can function in a frictionless and productive way. But the rigor of these rules and the exactitude with which they are enforced varies dramatically. Some nations tolerate singing in an elevator, swearing during an interview, or entering a bank barefoot, for example, while others frown upon such behaviors. Neither golden eagles nor bald eagles are endangered species. The U.S. bald eagle population has more than quadrupled since 2009, from around 72,000 to 317,000 birds. But the U.S. golden eagle population is still relatively small, around 30,000 birds, and at risk of declining. The colonial institution has a lengthy and illustrious history that dates back over 200 years. Many of the persons who have worked here are scientists themselves, such as Albert Einstein. He produced breakthroughs that made it simpler to produce and use electricity, allowing us to do things like switch on lights, cook dinner, and play video games on consoles. How quickly this occurs depends on the dynamics of fertility, mortality, and overseas migration. While a moderate pace of demographic change allows for gradual adjustment of the economy and policies to the changing population demographics, rapid changes are more difficult to manage. As a result, governments and society as a whole may need to take actions to address these issues. Undergraduates may choose to major in any one of 125 academic majors. The university's distinguished faculty includes internationally known scientists, authors, and teachers who are committed to continuing the university's tradition in providing one of the highest quality undergraduate educations available. A thesis is a claim that you can argue for or against. It should be something that you can present persuasively and clearly in the scope of your paper, so keep in mind the page count. If possible, your thesis should be somewhat original. Optogenetics is a research tool in neuroscience that uses light to alter the activity of genetically engineered light-sensitive nerve cells to better understand the function and behavior of clusters of neurons in animals. Now, a team led by researchers from the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology has developed an implantable optogenetic light-emitting device that can be wirelessly recharged. A young man from a small provincial town, a man without independent wealth, without powerful family connections and without a university education, moved to London in the late 1580s and, in a remarkably short time, became the greatest playwright not of his age alone but of all time. How was this achievement of magnitude made? How did Shakespeare become Shakespeare? We all know about bacteria, viruses and microscopic protozoa. We can watch the way that these tiny agents move into our bodies and damage our organs. We have a growing understanding of how our body mounts defensive strategies that fight off these invaders, and have built some clever chemical that can help mount an assault on these biovillains. Marriage is a big step in anyone's life, and there is an argument to be made against getting married too early. As any newlywed couple knows, there is a huge amount of financial pressure associated with marriage. Firstly, the wedding reception and honeymoon will cost you an arm and a leg. Then there's the matter of home loans, rent and energy bills. If you're looking to start a family, your child's education is another thing you need to save up for. Teenagers should probably find a proper job before deciding to tie the knot. There were two types of soldier in the Roman army, the Roman legionary and the auxiliaries. The legionaries were the very best soldiers and the auxiliaries were actually non-Roman citizens. Legionaries wore an undershirt made of linen and a woolen tunic. The linen helped the soldiers to stay cool while the wool helped to trap heat, keeping the soldiers warm. Along with all that they have in common, infants also show unique individual traits. Some are more active than others, some are more sociable and some are more interested in the world around them. Infants earlier on show consistent differences in friendliness and anxiety level which form part of their early character. How do we imagine the unimaginable if we're asked to think of an object, say, a yellow tulip? A picture immediately forms in our mind's eye. But what if we try to imagine a concept such as the square root of a negative number? Lincoln's apparently radical change of mind about his war power to emancipate slaves was caused by the escalating scope of war, which convinced him that any measure to weaken the Confederacy and strengthen the Union war effort was justifiable as a military necessity. Sir Charles Spencer Chaplin was an English comic actor, filmmaker, and composer who rose to fame in the era of silent film. He became a worldwide icon through his screen persona, the Tramp, and is considered one of the most important figures in the history of the film industry. His career spanned more than 75 years, from childhood in the Victorian era until a year before his death in 1977, and encompassed both adulation and controversy.
Soil is the top layer of the Earth's surface, mostly created from weathered rock. It is made up of varying amounts of minerals, humus, or decayed organic matter, and useful living creatures like worms. The finest rock particles within soil form sticky clay, the medium particles become silt, and the coarsest constitute sand. While there is sufficient moisture, soil supports vegetation, providing a habitat for a variety of animals. Modern buildings have to achieve certain performance requirements, at least to satisfy those of building codes, to provide a safe, healthy, and comfortable environment. However, these conditioned environments demand resources in energy and materials, which are both limited in supply, to build and operate. There are perhaps three ways of looking at furniture. Some people see it as purely functional and useful, and don't bother themselves with aesthetics. Others see it as essential to civilized living and concern themselves with design and how the furniture will look in a room, in other words, function combined with aesthetics, and yet others see furniture as a form of art. Regular exercise releases brain chemicals key for memory, concentration, and mental sharpness at the same time, lifting your mood and lowering stress and anxiety, all of which contribute to brain health. Studies show that regular exercise helps you manage complex tasks, organize, and razor sharp. History is selective. What history books tell us about the past is not everything that happened, but what historians have selected. They cannot put in everything, choices have to be made. Choices must similarly be made about which aspects of the past should be formally taught to the next generation in the shape of school history lessons. Australia has one of the world's most important mining industries. It is a major exporter of coal, iron ore, gold, and copper, and is self-sufficient in all minerals bar petroleum. Since the first discoveries, the coal in 1798, mineral production has risen every year. In the decade to 1992, it doubled. Our central aim is to enable you to develop knowledge and attitudes and skills that are conducive to constructive involvement, cooperation, and teamwork with others and will serve you well in future endeavors. To succeed, the process demands all of us a serious exercise in civic responsibility. tissues are grouped together in the body to form organs. These include the brain, heart, lungs, kidneys, and liver. Each body organ has a specific shape and is made up of different types of tissue that work together. For example, the heart consists mainly of a specialized type of muscle tissue, which contracts rhythmically to provide the heart's pumping action. While blue is one of the most popular colors, it is one of the least appetizing. Blue food is rare in nature. Food researchers say that when humans search for food, they learn to avoid toxic or spoiled objects, which were often blue, black, or purple. When food dyed blue is served to study subjects, they lose appetite. Quite obviously, a significant rise in the number of people in a given area or country will affect the demand for a whole host of goods and services. Note that a change in the structure of the population will increase the demand for some goods but reduce the demand for others. Researchers have found a novel form of the Alzheimer's protein tau in the fluid surrounding the brain and spinal cord. This form of tau, known as MTBR tau, indicates what stage of Alzheimer's a person is in and tracks with tangles of tau protein in the brain.
Scholars build their own personal libraries to support not only particular projects but also general reading in their field. They buy or make photocopies of materials when possible, so they can consult them frequently, mark pages and write annotation on them. When moving into a new field, they add to their collections, usually concentrating on primary texts. The findings of modern research support the view that the evolution of primitive men and their culture should be regarded as unity. Yet this unity is exceedingly complex, and future research will doubtless enable us to make finer distinctions between the periods that people composed it. In order to achieve the free flow of goods and services, with work and capital between the member countries, they needed to establish mutual politics in areas as diverse as agriculture, transport, and when they were concerned with a far wider range of issues. In ancient Athens, a boy was socially located by his family identity, and Plato often refers to his characters in terms of their paternal and fraternal relationships. Socrates was not a family man and saw himself as the son of his mother, who was apparently a midwife. Interdisciplinarity or interdisciplinary studies involves the combination of two or more academic disciplines into one activity, for example, a research project. It draws knowledge from several other fields like sociology, anthropology, psychology, economics, etc. It is about creating something by thinking across boundaries. It is related to an interdiscipline or an interdisciplinary field, which is an organizational unit that crosses traditional boundaries between academic disciplines or schools of thought, as new needs and professions emerge. Summerhill School was regarded with considerable suspicion by the educational establishment. Lessons were optional for pupils at the school, and the government of the school was carried out by a school council, of which all the pupils and staff were members, with everyone having equal voting rights. An economic depression is a period of sustained, long-term downturn in economic activity in one or more economies. It is more severe than a recession, which is a slowdown in economic activity over the course of a normal business cycle. Economic depressions are characterized by their length, and by abnormally large increases in unemployment rate. Aquaculture, also known as aquafarming, is the farming of aquatic organisms such as fish, crustaceans, mollusks, and aquatic plants. Aquaculture involves cultivating freshwater and saltwater populations under controlled conditions. Have you ever pictured a world without light? Just think how much we rely on man-made light sources in our lives. Without engineers, we wouldn't be able to live the way we do. No street lights, no TV, no computer display, no house lights. Engineers design and build all these things, and they also design, build and run the electricity systems that power all these light sources.